Yeah. All right. Welcome. Happy September. Happy Friday. Happy back to school. We have taken 2 months off here at LinkedIn Live with Lauren Pernick Comms. I hope everyone had a beautiful summer, or if you're on the other side of the equator, a beautiful winter. I'm Lauren Perna. I own Lauren Perna Communications, and we help companies tell their story through content and copywriting. And we do these little 30-minute LinkedIn Lives every Friday at 9 a.m., really just talking about the art and science of marketing communications. And I am so excited to bring back our chats with a lovely topic of recycling content. So this theme, you guys know how much I love my themes, is reduce, reuse, and recycle your content. If you're a baby of the 80s and 90s like us, everybody remembers that beautiful campaign, reduce, reuse, recycle. And I had to go on that theme because I think as a marketer and a writer, you're always trying to find a way to duplicate the best content. So this month we are featuring 3 wonderful marketers talking about reduce, reusing, and recycling your content. So today is the reduce. And we don't want you to reduce your content for the most part. We could also chat about that, overusing too much content. Today we are going to talk with Bethany Fiocchi Root of Oceanview Marketing about reducing your time. So that's where the reducing comes in. So Bethany, give us your 30,000 foot overview of you, your career, what you do, and kind of tell us a little bit your instant thoughts when I was like, do you want to talk about reducing your time? And you can tell them a little bit about the reason why I thought of you.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited. So I own Oceanview Marketing, and I help business owners get clarity on their next marketing steps. And I love automation. I love systems. I know there's a lot of people out there that they hear that and they hear the tech side of things and they think, oh, I love it. That's kind of a jam. So yeah, when you first asked me if I wanted to talk about this topic, I was like, ooh, absolutely. Because I have so many great tips and ways that, especially small business owners, when you're wearing so many different hats, you really need to find those areas of efficiency. And I have some tips for you today.
Oh, I love that. And I think sometimes too, when you are on a marketing team or whatnot, the biggest thing is thinking of the strategy and really think about those content pillars, but then the execution is where everything falls behind. And that's where people like you and I come in, is helping. But sometimes these are things that you can just simply do on your own. So tell us, the first thing that you had kind of mentioned was those content pillars. So tell us a little bit about that aspect and, really kind of identifying the strategy before you dive into the technical piece.
Absolutely. Yes. Everything has to start with what's your goal and what's your strategy, and kind of taking a step back before you go in and start to create any individual piece of content. And so I always like to look at it, okay, what are my goals, whether it be my quarterly goals, my yearly goals, my overall business goals, and then start to think, how is my content going to support that? And most likely there are going to be, in your business or your niche, there's going to be some basic topics that you want to talk about and make sure that you cover with your own unique point of view. And so that's where you want to start with thinking about pillar content. So these are going to be your really meaty pieces of content. For most people, they're either going to be a blog post or maybe a podcast episode, something where you're really able to break that topic down and really go into a lot of detail. And that's kind of, it's called hero content, pillar content. There are many different terms for it. But that's sort of the very first thing that you want to step back and do. And then what you'll end up being able to do is, once you write those pillar content, pieces of content, you can then break that up and essentially use that for 1 week, 2 week, 4 weeks worth of content across all different platforms. But we can kind of get to that a little bit later.
Interesting. And how can you give us some examples of what a hero content would look like? Say you were, like a business coach or, a fitness coach. Can you give us some examples or your own clients of what that hero content or that pillar content looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, off the top of my head, thinking marketing and things that I do,
Yeah.
when I'm thinking about my pillar contents, there are obviously so many different parts of marketing, but when you bring it up to a high level, people are thinking how to create marketing plans, how to create channel plans, like which platforms am I going to be on? What's my marketing strategy? Like those higher level types of things. So for maybe a nutrition coach, it might be, dieting or like what should my diet be? And that's maybe a bad example for nutrition.
Yeah, I know. We're
Food.
marketers here. Yeah, and maybe it's something like, how to handle your diet around the holidays or your specialty diet around the holidays.
Right. And like how exercise, movement, like all those sort of different larger components that roll up to the bigger topic. Is that's sort of how you like to look at it. So I'll just throw an example out, but for marketing, maybe it's how to choose which platforms that your business should be on. And then in that post, you're going to have your overall thoughts on figuring out how to create that strategy for businesses. What are the important considerations? Maybe you can then go into the pros and cons of each specific channel. So LinkedIn, pro con, SEO, pro con, et cetera, et cetera. And so you're going to have a really meaty, beefy post that you can then leverage each of those individual sort of paragraphs or topics.
Yeah.
And pull that out and kind of be able to talk about that independently, but without having to recreate the wheel.
So yeah, and I can give you guys a perfect example of what we are working on behind the scenes. And you can let me know if when you see it, if you're watching this and in a couple of weeks you see the kind of the pillar content and then the specific posts, shout it out because then I'll know you were watching. We wrote a very lengthy SEO driven blog post on storytelling in life science. If you know Lauren Pernick Comms, you know that one of our focuses is the life sciences, and that's something that we're always, we're trying to get new clients in life science and trying to help those types of companies. So we created a blog post on storytelling, and we have a couple of different segments about, kind of why, what it looks like, and examples. So you'll see throughout the next few months, we'll be sprinkling those in as posts. We'll probably do one of our LinkedIn lives on it, but right now it's a blog. So that's a good example. I always like to give them examples because nothing worse than listening to one of these and then leaving and being like, okay, so now what do I do? So talk about leveraging AI and how have you seen people do that? How do you recommend people do it? Because in the writing world, AI scares us. We try and use AI for strategy and ideation, but don't use it for execution. So tell us from your perspective, what have you been doing? What do you suggest?
Yeah, so I like to call AI my favorite little assistant.
Okay, good.
It helps me brainstorm. It helps me wrap my brain around, certain topics where I'm not quite sure how to break it down into more granular sections or topics. I'll give an example directly related to what we were just talking about. So here's kind of an action item. If you are thinking about your pillar content or your hero content and you're not quite sure what those big buckets are, you can go into ChatGPT or Gemini and you can actually ask it. So you can give it a prompt, which is kind of the instructions that it needs to give you information back, and say something like, I run, what's your business? It helps, who's your ideal customer? And I'm trying to solve problems for them. List out what their problems are. Give me 20 problems. And then from there, you can start to see, okay, people are challenged with this bucket. Like, for your article, SEO, maybe people are like, I don't know how to appear on SEO, or they feel overwhelmed by having to figure out what to do in SEO, et cetera. You'll get a bunch of those pain points. And then,
That's awesome.
a marketing kind of best practice is that you want to try to solve those, especially if you have a unique point of view on it. So that can help you get started with figuring out, say, start with 5 or 10 pillar pieces of content. That could honestly, I try to do one a month. That could take you through almost an entire year just in that 1 minute brainstorm that you're doing with your AI
It's
system.
huge.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that's a great way to explain it to people, because I think one of the biggest things about AI is you really do have to know how to use the prompts. The prompts are kind of where the gold is. And if you're just asking, like, what should I post online as a fitness coach or a marketer, then of course it's going to give you the most generic terms and the most generic suggestions. And that's where people are going to know that you're doing something much more, AI driven rather than AI started and then you kind of finish it. So you're using AI. So then kind of what's your next step? You are leveraging AI to kind of identify those content pillars. So then how do people decide, should this be a post? Should this be a blog post? Should this be a podcast? Kind of tell us what the next steps and, really to get the most bang out of their buck for these ideas.
Sure. So I recommend, unless you already have a very robust set of content, like your strategy is already really robust and you're already in multiple different channels successfully, if you're not sure where to start, pick one place and do it really well. So maybe for some people, that's a podcast. And for some people, that's going to be a blog post. I mean, there are other hero opportunities, but those are kind of the two main ones that a lot of small businesses use. And so what I recommend, and this is going to be a great time-saving tip as well throughout this whole conversation for everything that we talk about, is batch creating. Because as business owners, we wear, like I mentioned, we wear so many hats. We have so many things that we have on our plates that we have to get done that oftentimes we'll switch from one topic to another. And we actually waste time by doing that kind of multitasking.
Oh my gosh.
It's called, context switching is the term that I've heard it called, where it actually takes your mind more time to switch tasks. So say you're saying, today I'm going to write a blog post and then I'm going to go do my accounting or something, right? Like for you to actually sit down and wrap your head around the blog post and get into that creative mode and then switch over to accounting. And then the next time you go to write a blog post, it's extra time that's taking your brain down.
Oh, so fascinating. And that's probably why, for a large company that has maybe a smaller marketing team, outsourcing is so critical, because that marketing leader is doing so many things. They have no choice but to switch. So having somebody like Bethany or me to come in and help you, that is a huge benefit, because then you can really just focus on all your main tasks instead of that switching. So that definitely makes sense to me.
Definitely. Yes. Everybody, whether it's hired or in-house, absolutely batching, and you'll be able to be more efficient. I don't know. I'm sure some people, this might resonate with them if you've created any social content, especially, but if you go in, like I have a client right now and I'm doing social media for her, and it's awesome. And I'm so excited about it. But I find myself, as I'm trying to balance all the other things, I'll go and I'll create a post. And then that takes me a little bit. And then the next day I'll go and create another post. And I mean, I need to take my own advice. Everybody, can't be perfect.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
Shoemaker's kids, right? That's what.
But I find myself, I've done it. I batch, if I sit down and just batch create, I dedicate 4, 6, 8 hours, whatever it is. I sit down and I can get in the groove and be more efficient with my time and be more effective with it by just dedicating that time and sticking to one task. The social creation, whether that's pillar content creation, because I'm going to get a lot more done in those hours than I am if I try to sprinkle it in between tasks all week.
Yeah, and that is so interesting. And that leads me to a wonderful question, a little plug for you. So one thing that Bethany does, and you guys, if you follow along, my creative director, Melissa Dorsky, how I initially connected with Bethany was through Melissa, because Melissa and Bethany have run content creation days, batch creating days. And now I can see why. And again, as Bethany said, these are all things that as a marketer, as a business owner, but putting it in practice is so challenging. So even for someone like me to attend an event like Bethany's is huge, because you're you know, the benefit is dedicating this time. So tell us, obviously, I'm assuming that's why you're creating these days for people. So tell us a little bit about the days, give yourself a plug. Let's hear a little bit about it, because I think it does kind of set the stage and help people understand where this is the time reduction piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the reason that I started doing content workshops is because I heard from so many business owners, I know I should be creating content, but I just don't have the time. I just don't dedicate the time. But when I do, it's effective and it works and it propels my business forward. I wish that I could just have a place that I could go to dedicate time and just get it done. So that's where the fall content workshop comes in. I have it's 9 to 5 in the afternoon. Lunch is included, all inclusive. We're even going to have a little cocktail hour in the end with networking. But the benefit of the whole thing is that I'm going to give tips and tricks, some of the things we're talking about here in the workshop. But like most of the time is just you as a business owner coming in and just sitting down, headphones on. People bring their headphones, get into that
I love
groove,
that.
and just dedicating the time to it.
Accountability, baby. And I think that is where the key of time reduction comes in. Obviously, it's outsourcing, it's, delegating to people on your team, which is what I've learned to do. But I think, yeah, you're right. Some of the best time savers is when I just look at my schedule and I'm like, oh my God, I already have the whole month of September planned out. The months that I am not effective is when I have not planned it out and I'm, flying by the seat of my pants. And, my brain always has content in it. It's a blessing and a curse. So but even me, who can probably come up with content for, on the fly, even me, not having those dedicated times, not having that dedicated strategy, I am less effective because I'm not dedicating my whole focus to the content. My brain is in a million places. So I think that's a really good point about multitasking.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell us more about like repurposing across platforms, automating that feels like the next step.
Yep. Perfect segue. So far we have thought about our strategy and our goals. We have planned out hero content and hopefully created it. I like to create, they have free templates all over the internet where you can just get like a Google Doc or Google Sheet calendar, blank template calendar for each month of the year. And I like to say, okay, this is my theme for the month. Here's my theme. It's going to correlate with the pillar content that I'm going to release that month. And then just go through and plot out, knowing, again, back to the question of, where should you be planning this? Where should you be putting it? If you're just sort of starting out, or if you don't already have that crazy robust, 15 different platform strategy and you're trying to figure out where to focus, look at your calendar and plot out, okay, I'm going to start posting on Instagram, and then figure out how many posts you want per week. 3 is totally fine.
Totally fine.
And then plot out and take, so if you have a piece of pillar content and that's your theme, you probably have multiple different categories or sections within, like topics within that. Take each of those and pull that into a different spot or even a different week. Because some topics you could even talk about multiple posts.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And so pre-planning that out. So like you just said, when you have it all planned out ahead of time, less context switching, less, you're using your brain all at once and really getting into the groove and thinking about it in that one moment. I love planning out multiple months in advance because and I know a lot of business owners love this roadmap for yourself. So you can do that. Exactly what pieces of content. And you can even say each month, I'm going to dedicate one day and I'm just going to bang out all this social content, my blog post associated with it, and just get it all done at once. And then we can automate
it. And what does that entail?
Yes. So there are, like I mentioned, systems, marketing systems at the beginning of this. There are many different, especially for social media, platforms that can allow you to put the content into the scheduler platform, like Planoly, Tailwind. There are millions of different planning and scheduling systems, especially for social media. So many. And you put it in and you can schedule it in advance so that you're putting it into the system, pressing the button, basically just saying schedule for this date at this time, Boom. So you could have everything running and posting automatically by just working on it one day per month.
That's amazing. And I think I know people are going to come back and be like, "Oh, but I thought you shouldn't like schedule it in the schedulers." Listen, guys, I know that the company, people are going to tell you that, but it's better to have it scheduled and done than worry about posting in the moment. Yes, of course, if you can post in the moment, great, do it. But I think 99% of us are so busy that remembering to post in the moment is just not a feasible way of executing your content. So I think using the platforms that allow you to automate are so important. And most of the platforms these days allow you to schedule within the platform. So that kind of removes the, concern that people always say about third-party schedulers.
Yeah.
Do people come back to you with that a lot?
Sometimes it's so funny what the algorithms care about, right? Like some months it's the flavor of the month, some months it's fine. It's hard to keep up with that sometimes, but
It is hard, yeah.
I agree exactly with what you said is in the end, the thing that's going to be the most effective for you is the thing that works in your schedule. And hey, if you're somebody that wants to wake up every morning and think about the post and be inspired and create it and then go engage, like, cool, that's awesome. But
Go for it.
probably the people who are listening to this want to be able to save themselves some time. And so
Yeah.
automatically is totally fine. And one way to get around that too, like the concern of not wanting to use a scheduler, is that if you have a consistent time of day that you're posting, so whether that's 6 a.m. for you, 12 p.m., like whatever time of day works for you and your audience, you can plan to go on right before the posts and just do a little bit of engagement, comment, like some posts, reshare some things, so that by the time your post, you're just doing some like basic maintenance and engagement. You're not having to really think strategy and creative and copy.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
a much easier lift to do daily or however many times you're posting per week.
Yeah, that's how we do it. And for at Lauren Pernicoms, we use the native schedulers on all the platforms. However, we use a program called Notion to plan everything out. So the only thing that we are doing, my assistants are doing the scheduling on LinkedIn, on Instagram. So that's one way that we kind of get around using a third party. Not only is it a time saver, but it's also now we're not paying for additional platforms as a scheduler, if that's a concern to people. So maybe just having it in a Google Sheet, or like I said, we use Notion, having it pre-scheduled in LinkedIn or Instagram, but being able to see it in a calendar document is also just another way to visualize it and save your time too.
Definitely. Yeah. I think the main, point is that doing that creative process and that really like business owners thinking, that's the part that's going to save you a ton of time. And it's scheduling, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. Like whether it's in the platform, whether it's in a separate platform, just the concept of scheduling it is like the key, and the batching as well.
Yeah. And so what do you say to people that are like, oh, well, I'm just going to post it on every platform, or I don't know what platform? A long time ago, the advice was you have to post on multiple platforms and it has to be different. Don't worry about it being different. That is going to create a whole new problem of time for you. So that recommendation, I feel like we can definitely put that as a rumor. But should people be tailoring it in some way? Should they be testing different platforms? Or if you have multiple audiences, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think a lot of it goes back to the business's goals and the marketing plan's goals. Like, what are your goals and who is your audience? Or if you do have multiple audiences, do you have a different strategy for them on different platforms? So for example, some businesses may have a completely different audience on LinkedIn than who they're trying to target on Instagram. And in that case, if it tracks back to your goals, it might merit doing separate pieces of content. However, for most businesses, I think that just creating the presence and having that consistency in multiple different channels is actually going to be the thing that moves the needle for them. Because most people have one basic, ideal customer, one basic audience. And you really, from a marketing perspective, the more consistent you can be wherever they engage with you, the more they're going to retain that message, listen to that message, and be like, oh, that's been the same. I saw their website, it's the same. I saw this post, it's the same. I saw Instagram, it's the same. I'm going to pay attention.
Exactly. It's that repetitive piece that is so important to marketing. If you're saying something different on all your platforms, you're not going to be memorable. People, repetition is memory. And I think that's what we've done at Lauren Perna Comms is we were trying, we do have two pretty distinct audiences. We help small business owners, entrepreneurs, kind of game changers. But then our bread and butter is life science, which those folks are on LinkedIn. But we still want to make sure we're giving love to the entrepreneurs in our world there too. So that's where everything goes on Instagram. And you'll see sometimes we don't always post what we have on LinkedIn on Instagram, but we are never creating separate content. We are just maybe on Instagram, we'll have a few more emojis, or we, will maybe switch up the graphic or maybe not use a carousel or something like that. But we are never completely recreating because it is just that there's no need. That is going to be where the time suck is. And it's just not worth it. And I think one thing that we always try to do is just look at those analytics and see what's working. And it's, there's no harm or no foul if you are posting somewhere and it doesn't work. You can just stop posting there. It's not a big deal. No one's gonna, the social media police isn't gonna come after you. I think that's, oh, well, what if I start posting and that's not where my audience is? Like, it's really not a big deal.
Totally agree. I think some people can get stuck in their head a little bit on worrying like it has to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect. And I like to look at marketing and almost everything that I do across the board, whether it be for me or clients, is you start with almost a hypothesis, right? Like, I think if I do this, it's going to result in this. And then you run it like that for a while. And then you step back and you look at the data. I'm a huge data-driven marketer. I love the stats. Again, a lot of people don't love that. It's my jam. I am most happy when I have my face in a report somehow.
I love that.
But to that point too, I think as we're talking about batching and creating, it is important to strike a balance of how often you're looking at your stats and changing your course. I like to, batch and schedule about a month or so in advance, and you can certainly plan further in advance. But kind of analyzing like every month or so, taking a step back. Yeah, looking at which post did what, because that'll also help you too once you start to get more into the tactics and like the specific execution. Sometimes it's about the images and stuff, like, oh, I was doing this type of image, and I suspect if I tried this other type of image, maybe that did better. But I guess the point there is, don't get so caught up in looking at your analytics that you're going in every single day or every single week and trying to then change everything you are. Like, let it ride.
Yeah, exactly. Especially because, like with anything, you need time to see if it works. Just because a carousel on LinkedIn does great today doesn't mean it's going to do great tomorrow. Sometimes we have no idea why the algorithm does what it does. I wish that wasn't the case, but as you said, the algorithm is always changing, and honestly, it could just be a day where a holiday and you didn't realize it, and you happen to post some of your best content that day. Who knows? There could be a million variables that we just don't always know about, and that's okay. But sometimes that's why I always say it's an art and a science, because there's always a little bit of a nuance, and it sounds like, that's what you tell your clients too. And when you're looking at the data, remembering like, all right, well, it was August. Like, we didn't do that great, but like no one works in August. So bearing those things in mind.
Yeah, definitely. It's a big optimization process. And I personally, it's one of my favorite things about marketing and content creation. And, this whole thing we do to move our businesses forward is like having those hypotheses, doing everything you need to do to support that, and then going in and checking in and refining as you go to continue improving and adjusting, like you said, to algorithm changes or, the demure flavor of the month, right? Like
very demure, very mindful. Yeah, exactly. And if you are not following up with all the trends and whatnot, like that is okay. I think, the point here being is that it's finding the content that your audience wants to hear. That's, the end all and be all, and really figuring out when to serve it to them. When do they want to hear, what format do they want to hear it in, and making your life as easy as possible by using all these tips that Bethany has taught us today. Any final words of encouragement, or you want to pitch your content workshop day and your services a little bit?
Oh, yes, thank you. So the words of encouragement I would like to tell everybody is progress over perfection. And, you'll maybe, batch creating is going to be a little bit of a learning curve for some people, but, just try it out, give it a try, set a certain amount of time. Maybe it's a half hour, maybe it's 2 hours, whatever works good for you and your life and the way you run your business, and just give it a go and see what works and what doesn't. Maybe you use a scheduler, maybe you don't like it. Maybe it works super well for you. Like, just progress and trying wherever you can to save yourself those little bits of time by being more efficient is going to make a whole world of difference 6 months or a year from now, rather than worrying about being too perfect and it not being perfect or not being a perfect approach. And then 6 months or a year from now, you haven't done it yet, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's my parting tip. And then for my fall content workshop, I have a few spots left. I would love if anybody is in the Amesbury, Massachusetts area to join us at Bubble Bar Boston on Main. It's all new. It's a vintage cocktail lounge. Very cool.
Oh my gosh.
But yes, we would love to have everyone. So thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
Oh, thank you. This has been perfect. This is a great way to kick off our reduce, reuse, recycle. And we will catch you next week when Michelle Hakunda is going to join us and talk about repurposing content, kind of the next step of what Bethany has. She's laid a great foundation for us. And then next week, we're really going to talk about how do we do it? What does it look like? And all the kind of nitty gritty. So excited about that. Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will talk with you soon.